I went through the fire at the age of 5, but the real fire was waiting at home. My mother knew the truth about the fire, and she made me live with the guilt for 11 years. My name is Ava Monroe, and I've spent most of my life trying not to remember the day I became a headline. I was 5 years old, standing in our living room in a white lace Easter dress that my Aunt Delia had sewn by hand, little pearl buttons, a satin ribbon tied in the back. I remember twirling in it, laughing, the kind of laugh only 5-year-olds can do, where your whole body joins in. The house was cold that morning. Late March in Vermont doesn't care about calendars or holidays, it's still winter. I wanted it to feel warm and cozy, like the picture books. Like the movies. I'd seen my dad light the fireplace before. It looked easy. So I tried. I stacked too much kindling. I struck a match with a trembling hand. The flame flared, a small miracle in my tiny fingers. For a second it felt like magic. Like I was creating warmth with my own hands. Then the world changed. The flame jumped quick as a thought and kissed the hem of my dress. I didn't even feel it at first. I just heard a strange crackle and looked down to see the lace curling black, like dried leaves. Then came the heat. Then came the screaming. I remember spinning, running. My legs moved, but the fire followed. It danced up my body, climbed to my shoulders, licked my hair. I could smell myself burning, sugar and meat and horror. I screamed for my parents, but they weren't home. They'd gone to get ice cream. Just 10 minutes, they said. Then I heard it. Lucy, my baby sister, just 7 months old, crying from the nursery. Her room was on the other side of the flames. I could have run outside. I could have lived. But I didn't. I remember the hallway being full of smoke, like the house was exhaling secrets. I don't know how I got to her. I just remember not thinking. Just moving. My feet felt like glass. My skin like wax. But I kept going. When I picked her up, I couldn't feel my hands anymore. Just this numb pressure, like I was trying to hold water. But she stopped crying. She looked up at me with those moon-white eyes and blinked, calm as anything. I ran. Burst through the front door. Down the steps. Onto the frostbitten lawn. I remember the grass being wet under my knees. Then everything went quiet. No sirens yet. Just wind. And Lucy's tiny heartbeat against my chest. The next sounds I remember were screams. But they weren't mine. They were the neighbors. And then the sirens came. I woke up in a room that didn't smell like home. It smelled like plastic and bleach and fear. The lights were too bright. The beeping too steady. I couldn't move, not really. My arms were wrapped in gauze so thick I thought they'd been replaced with pillows. My face felt stiff, tight, like a mask had melted and hardened there. When I blinked, the world felt slower. Underwater. Someone leaned over me and smiled. A nurse. I think her name was Trish. She had a voice like oatmeal and told me I was in Boston. That I'd been asleep for a little while. That I was lucky to be alive. I didn't feel lucky. I felt like something had ended. They said I had third-degree burns over 70% of my body. I didn't know what that meant at the time. I just knew I couldn't recognize my hands. That they didn't bend the way they used to. That they didn't feel like mine. The days bled together, stitched together by morphine drips and blurry faces. I remember the way my mom's hands trembled when she held mine, the guilt swimming in her eyes like sharks. She never said it aloud, but I could feel it. She should have been home. Dad tried to make it better. He brought me stuffed animals I didn't ask for, told me stories like I was still 5. But I wasn't 5 anymore. I was something else. Something melted and remade. A phoenix, maybe, except no one tells you how much it hurts to rise from ashes. I had 23 surgeries before I turned 6. Skin grafts taken from my thighs, my back, even my scalp. They tried to rebuild me from the pieces that hadn't burned. But every stitch, every cut, felt like someone was trying to erase the girl in the white dress and replace her with someone new. I hated mirrors. Still do. The first time I saw my reflection, I didn't cry. I just stared. My face looked like a map of pain. Pink, uneven patches. Shiny, tight skin that pulled when I smiled. And my eyes were the same. That was the worst part. They still looked like me. The doctors said I was brave. Reporters started calling me the miracle child. A local paper ran a photo of me holding Lucy in the hospital bed, her tiny hands on my bandaged chest. The headline read, Ava the Angel. I didn't feel angelic. I felt raw, exposed, and very, very angry. Sometimes at night, I'd pretend the fire had finished the job, that I hadn't made it out. It wasn't a death wish. It was just easier to imagine peace than to keep waking up in this stitched-together body. Easier to imagine silence than the way people looked at me. Because they did look at me. Even in the hospital. Especially when I started walking again. People whispered outside my room. Volunteers called me sweetheart. In a way that made my skin crawl. Like I was something pitiful. Lucy visited often. She'd coo and drool and pull at my hair like nothing had happened. Like I was still just Ava, her big sister. Her trust was the only thing that felt real. She never flinched at my scars. Never stared too long. I clung to her like a lifeline. When I was discharged 8 months later, they filmed it. A whole crew. Right there on our front lawn asking questions I didn't have answers to. How does it feel to be home, Ava? Are you excited to start school again? Do you remember what happened that day? I wanted to scream. Instead, I said fine and kept my eyes on the ground. They thought the worst part was over. It wasn't. Because you can survive fire. You can rebuild skin. You can walk out of a hospital upright. But no one tells you what happens when the smoke follows you. When you breathe it in your dreams. When you wake up screaming and no one believes you're still burning. You'd think returning home would be the end of the nightmare. But sometimes walking back into the place where everything changed is its own kind of horror. The living room had been gutted and rebuilt. New carpet. New walls. Even the fireplace was gone. Bricked up like it had never existed. But I remembered it. Every inch. I could still smell the scorched wood beneath the paint. I could feel the exact place where my feet blistered against the floor. No one talked about that day. Not really. My mom kept busy, too busy. She joined church groups, baked casseroles she didn't eat. Dad dove into work, leaving early and coming home late. We all wore smiles that didn't quite fit. But the silence was loud. They enrolled me in school again like everything was normal. It wasn't. I walked into 5th grade with a fresh backpack and skin that looked like melted wax. Some kids stared. Others whispered. A few tried to be kind, but kindness can still feel like pity when it's wrapped in wide eyes and tilted heads. One boy, Jacob Carter, asked if I still smelled like smoke. Not cruelly, not really. Just curiously. But I felt something crack inside me when he said it. Like I'd never be anything else again. Just the girl who burned. I stopped looking people in the eye. Stopped raising my hand in class. Stopped laughing. At home, Lucy was growing fast. She'd toddle into my room at night and curl up beside me like a kitten. Her little fingers wrapping around mine. She never remembered the fire. But she knew when I was hurting. She could always tell. The nightmares started soon after school began. I'd wake up gasping, choking on phantom smoke. My sheets soaked with sweat. Sometimes I'd scream so loudly that Lucy would wake too, wide-eyed, trembling, not understanding. Mom would come in and hush us both, stroking my hair like I was the baby. Eventually I stopped sleeping. Instead I started writing. It began with a single line scrawled across a notebook page. Dear fire, I hate you. Then another. You took my skin but not my soul. And another. I see you in mirrors but I won't let you win. They turned into letters. Long, rambling, angry things. Sometimes I wrote 10 in a night. I'd seal them in envelopes, label them with dates. Then I'd sneak outside and burn them in a metal lockbox Dad kept behind the shed. Felt right. Like speaking the fire's language. Like reclaiming something. I never told anyone. It was my secret. My ritual. My way of fighting back. Because even if the world saw me as some brave little survivor, I knew the truth. The fire didn't end that day. It just changed shape. And it followed me home. There's something cruel about fall in Vermont. The way the air turns brittle. The way it smells faintly of wood smoke and rotting leaves. Supposed to be cozy. Comforting. But for me, October was a season of ghosts. I'd be walking to school and suddenly I'd freeze because I swore I smelled it. That same burnt air from the fire. That sickly sweet, acrid scent that doesn't just stay in your nose. It coats your throat, settles in your lungs. I'd whip around expecting to see smoke curling through the trees. But there was never anything there. Just raked lawns, orange pumpkins, kids laughing in jackets. I started keeping the letters in a shoebox under my bed. Dozens of them now. Pages and pages addressed to the fire like it was an ex-lover I couldn't stop thinking about. I told it everything. How I hated the way strangers stared. How I hated my parents' silence. How I hated that my body didn't feel like mine anymore. Sometimes I imagined it listening. Like the fire wanted me to talk to it. One night I wrote, "What do you want from me?" Then I burned that one too. But it didn't feel like enough anymore. One afternoon in mid-October, I was walking home from school when I passed the old Holloway barn. It had been abandoned for years. Just a leaning skeleton of wood and rusting tools, tucked at the edge of a cornfield. But that day I saw something strange. The door was open, and I swear I saw light flickering inside. Firelight. I stepped closer. My breath caught in my throat. My heart did this weird double beat like it recognized something before my brain did. But when I reached the door frame, there was nothing. Just empty hay, broken boards, dust dancing in a shaft of sun. I stood there for a long time waiting for, I don't even know what. A whisper? A spark? That night I dreamed of fire again. But it was different this time. It wasn't the living room. It was the barn. I was inside it and the walls were breathing. Expanding. Contracting. Like lungs. And the fire wasn't burning me. It was talking to me. I couldn't remember the words when I woke up. Only that I wasn't scared. And that terrified me more than anything. At school I started drawing flames in the margins of my notebook. Not stylized ones, realistic ones. Too realistic. The kind that looked like they were licking the edges of the paper. A teacher found one and called my mom. She cried on the phone and told them I was still healing. That it was just a phase. It wasn't. Lucy started having trouble sleeping again. She'd wander into my room in the middle of the night, crying, saying she heard a crackling noise in her closet, that something was whispering to her from the shadows. I held her close and told her it was just a dream, but deep down I wondered, because I was hearing whispers too. Only mine came when I was alone, walking through the woods, in the shower, right before sleep. Just a breath, really. A low hum, like someone exhaling right behind me. I told myself it was trauma, that my brain was misfiring, that the fire had rewired me somehow. But part of me wasn't sure. Part of me thought it was still here, still alive. One night I sat at my desk, lit a candle and wrote a new letter. Dear Fire, if you want something from me, you need to tell me. I'm tired. I'm not afraid of you anymore. But you can't keep haunting me. Not like this. You got your moment. You got your story. You don't get to have the rest of me too. I watched the flame eat the paper, slow and deliberate. Then I blew it out. The room went dark. And I swear in that exact moment I heard a whisper behind me, closer than ever before. Said one word. Soon. I didn't tell anyone about the whisper. What could I say? That the fire was talking to me? That it had followed me all these years and now lived in the spaces between silence? I could already hear the responses. Trauma, nightmares, PTSD. Things they said with soft voices and clinical distance. Words that boxed you in without actually seeing you. So I stayed quiet. But inside things were unraveling. It started with the photograph. An old one, buried in the back of Mom's cedar chest in the attic. I'd gone up there to escape, to breathe in the dust and mothballs and pretend I was in someone else's house. That's when I found it. A picture of me, maybe 4 years old, sitting on the hearth in front of the fireplace. But what stopped me cold was the background. My mother. Standing behind me, staring down at the flames. And not smiling. In fact, she looked angry. Her hand was reaching out, almost touching the mantel, her face twisted in a way I'd never seen before. I stared at the photo for a long time. My heart thudded in that old familiar rhythm, the one that always came before the nightmares. That night, I brought the photo to her, asked where it came from. She froze. Where did you get this? She asked too quickly. In the attic, I said. Why do you look like that? She blinked. A long pause. I don't know, she said finally. That was a long time ago. But something in her voice cracked. And once you hear that kind of crack, you can't unhear it. Something wasn't right. The next day I snuck back into the attic and dug deeper. Found more photos. Clippings. A burn report from the fire department. Pages scorched on the edges like they'd barely escaped the blaze themselves. And in one of them, an official report, I saw something that made my stomach drop. Origin of fire. Accelerant detected near base of fireplace. Suspected ignition source, open flame. Investigation incomplete due to compromised scene. Accelerant. I didn't know that word at 5. But someone else in the house did. A thought bloomed in my mind like smoke under a door. Terrible. Crawling. I shook it off. No. It was me. I lit the match. It was my fault. Wasn't it? The whispers got louder that night. Not words. Just pressure. Like heat curling around my ears, begging me to listen. And in the darkness I heard Lucy stir in her crib across the hall. Then whimper. Then cry. I rushed to her room and found her sitting upright, her eyes glassy, her voice shaking. I saw it, she whispered. The red thing. It stood in the hallway. It was looking at you. I didn't know what scared me more. That she dreamed what I had been feeling. Or that maybe she hadn't dreamed at all. After Lucy's nightmare, something shifted in me. Not fear. I'd lived with fear so long it was practically my shadow. No, this was something colder. Harder. Determined. I needed the truth. The real truth. I waited until Mom went out, grocery run, or maybe just an excuse to breathe without me nearby. Then I went into her room and opened the locked drawer in her dresser. The key had always been tucked in the jewelry box, hidden beneath old charm bracelets and a broken watch. Inside the drawer, a manila folder. Thick. I sat on the carpet and opened it. Inside therapy notes. Letters. Old insurance documents. But it was one wrinkled sheet of paper that stopped my breath. A fire risk assessment. Dated 2 months before the fire. It described faulty gas lines near the fireplace. High risk of ignition. Repairs strongly advised. And at the bottom a signature. Ava Monroe. My mother. She knew. I read it again. Again. My hands shook. My arms felt numb. The fire hadn't been some freak accident, some innocent childhood mistake. There'd been a warning. And she ignored it. Why? I waited for her that night. Sat on the front steps with the folder in my lap like a weapon. When her car pulled into the driveway and our eyes met, I saw it, the dread. She didn't even try to fake a smile. I found it, I said. Her lips parted but no sound came. The report. You knew it was dangerous. You knew. She sat beside me slowly, like she was lowering herself into a grave. I didn't mean for it to happen, she said, barely above a whisper. But it did. And you let me believe it was my fault. She turned to me and her face, God, her face was so full of sorrow I almost couldn't look at her. I was scared, she said. Your dad and I were fighting all the time. The house needed so many repairs. I thought we had time. Just one more winter. Just a few more weeks before we fixed it. But then I lit the match. I said, the words sharp, hollow. She reached for me. I pulled away. You let me carry that, I said. For 11 years. Tears welled in her eyes. Ava, you were 5. If I told you it wasn't your fault, you would have still blamed yourself. And the truth? I blamed myself enough for both of us. I couldn't breathe. The air felt thick again like that night. Like smoke curling around my throat. Inside the house something creaked. I turned. And for a split second I swear I saw it just beyond the doorway. Flicker. A red shadow. Watching. I blinked and it was gone. But it left a chill behind. Not of fear. Of clarity. The fire hadn't come for me. Not really. It had come for the truth. And now it wanted something more. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in my room with the window cracked open, listening to the wind move through the trees like whispers. I could feel it building, the way animals sense storms before the clouds roll in. Not fear, not exactly. A reckoning. The fire had been following me. I knew that now. Not as smoke or memory, but as something deeper. A presence. A force. It had been waiting for the truth to crack open like dry timber. And now it was here. I wasn't imagining it. I wasn't crazy. I looked around my room. Scars and picture frames, letters stuffed in the shoebox under my bed. The old metal box I used to burn the pages in. Tucked in the corner like an altar to a god I never meant to worship. I reached for it. Opened it. It was empty but still smelled of char. I wrote one more letter. My last. Dear Fire. You took so much from me. My skin. My childhood. My reflection. You tried to make me think I was only what you left behind. But I see you now. You aren't power. You're grief. Guilt. Secrets. You were never just flames, you were what we tried to hide. But I'm not hiding anymore. I'm not your victim. I'm the one who walked through you and came out the other side. And tonight I end this. I folded it neatly, placed it in the box, and lit a match. It burned slow, clean. No fear, just resolve. But as the paper curled into ash, the room changed. The walls tightened. The air shimmered. Heat pulsed from the closet, from under the bed, from the floorboards. My skin prickled. My breath caught. And then I saw it. In the corner of the room, a figure. Not made of fire, not exactly. But flickering, its shape trembling like candlelight. Human-sized. Red-orange skin that rippled like smoke. Eyes that glowed with sorrow, not malice. Its mouth moved but didn't speak. Still I understood it. It wasn't the fire. It was what the fire had left behind. It was every moment I'd never been allowed to grieve. It was my mother's guilt. My father's silence. The part of me that believed I was broken. I stood. I didn't run. And for the first time I spoke. You don't get to live here anymore. The figure stilled. Then cracked. Like glass under pressure. A wind roared through the room, but nothing moved. Just the box, glowing for a second more before the flame vanished. And with it, the figure. Gone. And so quiet. So finally quiet. I sank to the floor and cried, not from fear, but from the strange, aching freedom of letting go. The next morning, the world looked different. Lucy climbed into bed with me and whispered, "It's gone, isn't it?" And I nodded. She just smiled, the way kids do when they know things adults don't. Mom didn't ask about the metal box, even when she found it cold and empty. She just looked at me, and for the first time in years, she really saw me. At school, the whispers stopped. Or maybe they didn't. Maybe I just stopped caring. I wore short sleeves that day. I let the sun touch my scars. I didn't flinch. People stared. I let them. Because I had stared into something much worse and survived. Later that week, I walked to the Holloway barn. It was gone. Burned down in the night, they said. No one knew how. No suspects. No answers. I didn't need one. I stood in the ash and closed my eyes. And in the silence, I whispered one last goodbye. Not to the fire. To the girl in the white lace dress. I'm sorry I left you in there for so long, I said. But I've got you now. Sometimes I still dream of fire. But it doesn't chase me anymore. It watches. And I walk through it without fear. Because I am Ava Monroe. And I am not a victim. I am the girl who ran through fire and kept going.